Welcome to my channel Physics Guru. In this video, we'll talk about diode. What is diode? The diode is an electrical component which acts as a one-way switch for the current. Here I have mentioned one-way switch for the current. What does this mean? That means it allows to flow the current in one direction and it does not allow the flow of current in the opposite direction, and I will explain this one. But before I explain, let's talk a little about the resistor. For example, you have a resistor here, and if you connect a resistor to a positive terminal like this, you'll get a current in the circuit. Okay, so this is connected to the positive terminal and this is connected to the negative terminal. In each case, you will get a current. But now what happens if I switch the polarity? Even if we switch the polarity and it's connected to a resistor, we'll get exactly the same amount of current. So it doesn't matter which way you connect a resistor in the circuit, you'll get exactly the same amount of current. But that's not the case with the diode. So the diode acts differently. For example, here I have one diode here, this diode here. So this is the symbol for the diode. For example, this diode here, and that's the actual picture of the diode. And if I connect this diode to the positive terminal and this to the negative terminal, then only in this case it allows to flow the current. But if I connect this one to the negative and the other side to the positive, it does not allow the current to pass through it, or the current in the circuit will be almost equal to zero, or equal to zero, you can say. So this we call as a diode. That means it is allowing to pass the current in only one direction, while it completely or severely restricts the flow of current in the opposite direction. That's the reason we call it a one-way switch. So this is the symbol for the diode. Okay, and this path we call as or this terminal we call as an anode, and you see this bar here. So this one is called a cathode. So when this anode is connected to the positive terminal and this cathode is connected to the negative terminal, only then we get the current. Okay, and now if the anode is connected to the negative terminal and the cathode is connected to the positive terminal, we won't get any current in this circuit. And we'll talk about more about the forward bias and the reverse bias just in a minute. So this is the symbol for the diode, and that's an actual picture of the diode. So when you have the actual picture, this stripe, the white stripe, tells you this is the cathode, and the other one is the anode. And there are various types of diode. So here I will list few of the diodes here. For example, we have the light emitting diode. So this is the actual picture of the diode, and the symbol for the diode is this one here. The only difference between this diode we call as a junction diode. Okay, remember this one is the junction diode. The junction diode. And this junction diode, so the only difference in the symbol, the only difference is if we have a circle here and then lights are coming out of this one. So this arrow represents the light. What does this mean? When you supply a voltage between these two terminals, then the light will come out. And for this reason, we call this as a light emitting diode. And then we have other kinds of diode, that is the photodiode. The photodiode, here the arrow, the light is towards the diode. That means when you shine light onto this diode, then there will be a voltage between these two, or you can see a potential difference between these two, or there will be a current flow in this path, and we call this as the photodiode. In this case, because of the current, you see the light, and in this case, because of the light, you see the current, and we call it a photodiode. And the Zener diodes are most likely like when it is connected in the forward bias, it basically acts as a junction diode. But this diode also operates into the reverse the bias as well, and we'll talk about more detail in the other videos about the Zener diode. So the Zener diode allows the current flow both in the forward bias and in the reversed bias. Okay, and here is again the junction diode, and that's the symbol. So let me talk a little bit about the forward bias and the reverse bias. What does it mean? So we have, let's say we have a junction diode. Let me go a little back here. Just a quick thing here. So when we have a limit, the light emitting diode, then you see these two, the terminals has the different lengths here. So the longer channel we call as a anode, and the shorter one we call as a cathode. Exactly for the same for the photodiode, this longer terminal we call as a the anode, and the shorter one we call as a cathode. So the positive and negative means if we connect this one the positive terminal and this one to the negative terminal, only then this light emitting diode will turn on. Now we'll come back to the forward bias and reverse bias. So when let's say we have a diode here, a junction diode. When the anode of this diode is connected to the positive terminal, you will see the current in the circuit. And this one we call as a forward bias. That means there is a current in the circuit. And when we connect this the anode to the negative terminal of the battery, then there will be no current in the circuit, and we call this one as a reverse bias. So what does this mean again? So in this path or in this configuration, current can easily pass through the circuit, or current can easily flow through the circuit. So when the current easily flow through the circuit, that means in the forward bias, the diode has a very small or very low resistance. It offers almost no resistance to the circuit. But when we connect this diode in the reverse bias, then there will be no current. That means in this reverse bias, the diode has a very high resistance. So this is it from this video. In the next video, I'll talk a little more about the diode approximation. We'll talk a little more about the forward bias and the reverse bias, and I will also talk about the diode characteristics. So this is it. If you have any questions, write down in the comment section below, and do not forget to like, share and subscribe the channel. Thank you very much.